Have you ever met someone who seems completely untouchable, unshaken by criticism, unaffected by failure, unmoved by the chaos around them? Maybe you've looked at people like that and wondered, how? How do they stay so calm, so in control, so immune to the noise? Maybe you've even tried to become like them. You've told yourself to stop caring so much, to stop letting things get to you, to build up your armor and stop being so sensitive. But deep down, you know something doesn't feel right. Because the more you try to shut down, the more you feel like you're losing a part of yourself. And that's the myth we need to break wide open. Because true strength doesn't come from being cold. It doesn't come from cutting yourself off from emotion or pretending that nothing affects you. That's not untouchable. That's just empty. Real untouchability is different. It's not about building walls so high that no one can reach you. It's about standing firm in who you are while still feeling deeply, still caring, still being human. It's about not letting the noise define you, but not letting it silence you either. That's the kind of strength that lasts. That's the kind of strength that changes lives. But here's the truth. Most people never get there. They either stay too soft and get hurt over and over, or they go too far in the opposite direction and lose their warmth entirely. And that's why so many of us feel stuck. We want to be strong, but not at the cost of our soul. We want to protect ourselves, but not at the cost of our connection. And that's exactly why this journey matters. Because you don't have to choose between being vulnerable and being numb. You can be both strong and sensitive. You can be untouchable and still deeply human. Think about the last time you were hurt. Maybe it was a harsh word. Maybe it was a rejection. Maybe it was a failure that made you question everything. And in that moment, what did you do? Did you close off a little? Did you tell yourself not to care so much next time? Because that's what we're taught. Protect yourself, don't let them see you bleed. But what if that's exactly what weakens us? What if the moment we start shutting down is the moment we give power to the pain? Real untouchability doesn't come from hiding. It comes from healing. It comes from understanding that you don't have to be afraid of your emotions to be strong. You just have to learn how to master them, not suppress them, not ignore them, master them. And that's not something you're born with. It's something you build. It's something you grow into, piece by piece, through self-awareness, discipline, and courage. And here's the reward for sticking around. This isn't just about surviving. It's about thriving. It's about waking up every day knowing that nothing, not rejection, not criticism, not even failure, can shake your foundation. It's about living with peace, not because nothing ever bothers you, but because you've built something unshakable inside. And it's about staying warm, staying connected, staying human, because that's the real power. That's the real freedom. Because the strongest people in the world aren't the ones who never feel pain. They're the ones who feel it all and still stand tall. They're the ones who know that being untouchable doesn't mean becoming cold. It means being so deeply rooted in who you are that no outside force can pull you from your center. And that's not just possible. It's within your reach. So if you're tired of being hurt, but don't want to lose your heart, if you want to be strong, but not at the cost of your soul, if you're ready to build unshakable inner strength without losing your warmth, then keep listening, because this is where your transformation begins. This is where you learn how to be untouchable without becoming cold. You already know that true strength isn't about shutting down. It's not about pretending nothing hurts, because deep down you feel everything. And that's not weakness. It's awareness. It's the first step toward becoming untouchable without losing your warmth. But now you might be asking, if I don't shut down, how do I protect myself? If I stay open, won't I just keep getting hurt? That's a fair question, because pain is real. Rejection is real. Betrayal, disappointment, loss, they all cut deep. And when you care, when you're emotionally invested in your life and the people around you, you open yourself up to being hurt. So why wouldn't you just close off? Why wouldn't you harden your heart just enough to stop the bleeding? Because that's exactly what fear wants you to do. Fear doesn't want you to feel pain, but it also doesn't want you to feel joy. It doesn't want you to feel love or passion or inspiration. Fear wants control. And the easiest way to control you is to convince you that the only way to survive is to numb yourself, to shut people out, to stop caring so deeply. But here's the truth. When you start protecting yourself from pain by closing your heart, you stop living fully. You trade real strength for false safety. And that's a trade you can't afford to make. So what's the alternative? How do you stay open without being destroyed by every setback, every harsh word, every disappointment? How do you remain deeply human and still stand unshaken? The answer lies in understanding why we fear being hurt in the first place. Because once you understand the root of your fear, you can begin to master it. You can stop letting it dictate your choices. You can stop letting it control how you show up in the world. Let's be honest, most of us have been hurt in ways that left scars. Maybe it was a moment when you opened up and were met with judgment. Or maybe it was a failure that made you question your worth. Maybe it was someone you trusted deeply who betrayed that trust. And in those moments, something inside you changed. You started to believe that vulnerability was dangerous, that caring too much could destroy you. So you started building armor, not because you wanted to, but because you needed to survive. But survival isn't the same as thriving. And that's where most people stay stuck, trapped in a cycle of fear and protection, never realizing that their armor is the very thing holding them back. Because here's the thing, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. You will face rejection. You will face loss. You will face moments that shake you to your core. But you don't have to let those moments define you. You don't have to let them harden you. You can feel the pain and still choose your direction. You can be deeply wounded and still choose to heal. That's the power you've always had. And that's the mindset that changes everything. Because the moment you stop fearing pain and start understanding it, you reclaim your power. You stop letting it control your decisions. You stop letting it tell you who you should be. You start seeing pain not as a threat, but as a teacher. You start seeing every wound as a doorway to deeper strength. And that's when you begin to change. That's when you start becoming the kind of person who doesn't just survive, but thrives. The kind of person who feels everything yet remains unshaken. The kind of person who can be deeply hurt and still choose to love, to lead, to stand tall. So ask yourself this, are you protecting yourself because you want to, or because you're afraid not to? Are you closing off because it's the only way you know how to survive, or are you ready to evolve? Ready to stop letting fear make your decisions for you? Because if you are, then you're already on the path. And the next step is to understand the trap you've been falling into, the trap of emotional armor. Because that's where most people get stuck. That's where strength turns into isolation. That's where protection turns into self-sabotage. And that's exactly what we're going to break down next. Because if you want to be untouchable without becoming cold, you have to understand the cost of false protection. You have to see the trap for what it is. And most importantly, you have to be ready to break free. You already understand that fear wants you to shut down. It wants you to believe that the only way to survive is by closing yourself off, by numbing the parts of you that feel too deeply. But now you know that's a lie. Real strength isn't about hiding from pain. It's about facing it, understanding it, and refusing to let it control your life. And yet, even with that awareness, many still fall into the same trap. They build emotional armor, not realizing that while it protects them in the short term, it slowly cuts them off from what makes them truly powerful. Connection, passion, purpose. Because here's the truth. Most people don't realize they're wearing armor until it starts suffocating them. It starts small. A rejection here, a harsh word there. Maybe someone dismisses your ideas or someone close betrays your trust. And instead of processing the hurt, you start protecting yourself. You tell yourself not to care so much next time, not to open up so easily, not to expect too much from people. And at first it feels like relief, or like control, like safety. But over time, something shifts. The walls you built to protect yourself become the very thing that isolates you. You stop feeling deeply, not just the pain, but the joy too. You start holding back in relationships, in work, in life itself. And then one day you look in the mirror and realize you're not just guarded, you're numb. That's the trap of emotional armor. It doesn't show up as a cage, it shows up as protection. It tells you that if you just harden your heart a little, if you just stop caring so much, you'll never get hurt again. But what it doesn't tell you is that you'll also stop living fully, that you'll lose your warmth, your drive, your sense of meaning. Because real power doesn't come from being untouchable by others. It comes from being fully in touch with yourself, from knowing who you are, why you matter, and what you stand for. And when you start shutting that down, you stop growing, you stop evolving, you stop becoming who you were meant to be. So ask yourself this. Are you protecting yourself because you want to, or because you've forgotten how to feel without breaking? Have you convinced yourself that being cold is the price of being strong? Because that's exactly what happens when you stay in survival mode for too long. You forget that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's courage. You forget that connection isn't a risk, it's fuel. And you forget that the deepest wounds aren't caused by opening up, they're caused by staying closed for too long. But here's the good news. You don't have to stay trapped in this cycle. You can break free. You can learn to protect yourself without shutting down, to stand firm without losing your heart, to be untouchable, not by cutting people off, but by building unshakable inner strength. And the first step is recognizing that emotional armor is not your friend. It's not your shield. It's your prison. Because every time you hide behind it, you give away a piece of your power. Every time you choose detachment over depth, you weaken your connection to what truly matters. And that's why so many people feel stuck. They think they're protecting themselves, but all they're doing is limiting their own potential. They wonder why they don't feel inspired, why they struggle to connect, why they feel empty, even when everything looks good on the surface. And they never make the connection between their emotional armor and their lack of fulfillment. Because they've been taught that strength means toughness, that resilience means resistance, that being untouchable means being unbreakable. But real untouchability doesn't come from resisting emotion. It comes from mastering it. It doesn't come from shutting people out. It comes from standing firm in who you are, no matter what comes your way. And that kind of strength doesn't isolate you. It empowers you. It doesn't cut you off from the world. It connects you to your truest self. And once you understand that, everything changes. Because now you see the trap for what it is. Now you understand that false protection only leads to real loss. And now you have a choice. You can keep wearing the armor and live a life of quiet suffering, or you can take it off piece by piece and rediscover the power of being both strong and sensitive, of being deeply human and completely unshaken. And that's where the real journey begins. You've seen the trap. You know that emotional armor doesn't protect you. It limits you. It gives you a false sense of safety while slowly disconnecting you from your own heart. And now you understand that real strength doesn't come from shutting down, but from standing firm while still feeling deeply. But if you're ready to move past survival and step into true power, there's something even more important you need to grasp. The foundation of unshakable inner strength isn't built by avoiding pain or pretending it doesn't exist. It's built by developing something far more powerful, inner stability. Think about the people you truly admire, the ones who seem completely grounded no matter what life throws at them. They don't panic when things go wrong. They don't crumble under pressure. They don't lose themselves in chaos. Why? Because they've built something unbreakable inside, a center of calm that nothing can shake. And that's not just luck. That's not privilege. That's not detachment. That's discipline. That's mindset. That's resilience. And most importantly, that's something you can build too. Because here's the truth. Emotions are not your enemy. In fact, they're one of your greatest tools, but only if you learn how to regulate them instead of letting them control you. Think about it. When someone insults you, do you immediately feel the urge to defend yourself? When you face rejection, does your entire self-worth take a hit? When something goes wrong, do you spiral into frustration or fear? If so, you're not weak. You're simply reacting instead of responding. And that's exactly where most people get stuck. They let their emotions dictate their actions instead of guiding them with intention. But imagine a different version of yourself, one who doesn't flinch at criticism, one who doesn't fall apart when things don't go as planned, one who feels everything, pain, joy, disappointment, excitement, but never loses control. That's not coldness, that's mastery. That's what happens when you stop being ruled by your emotions and start leading them. And that's where true untouchability begins. Because research shows that emotionally stable people handle stress better. They recover faster from setbacks. They make clearer decisions under pressure. They don't just survive, they thrive. And the reason is simple. They've trained themselves to stay centered regardless of external circumstances. They've built an internal anchor that keeps them grounded when everything around them is shifting. So how do you build that kind of stability? It starts with awareness. You have to understand your triggers before you can master them. What makes you react instantly? What causes you to shut down, lash out, or overthink? Most people never ask themselves these questions. They just keep reacting the same way over and over again, expecting different results. But real change comes when you pause long enough to see your patterns, when you recognize that your reactions aren't just random, they're habits. And like any habit, they can be changed. Next, it requires mindset. You have to shift from seeing challenges as threats to seeing them as opportunities, from fearing failure to embracing it as feedback, from avoiding discomfort to using it as fuel for growth. This isn't just positive thinking. It's psychological training. It's rewiring the way you interpret the world so that nothing can knock you off course. And finally, it demands daily practice. Inner stability isn't built overnight. It's strengthened every time you choose composure over chaos. Every time you breathe through frustration instead of exploding. Every time you stand tall after being knocked down. These small moments add up. They create the muscle memory of resilience. They shape the kind of person who doesn't break under pressure, who thrives because they know who they are, no matter what happens. That's the kind of strength you're aiming for. Not the kind that hides behind walls, not the kind that numbs itself to avoid pain, but the kind that walks straight into the fire and still stands tall, the kind that feels everything and still chooses direction, the kind that knows peace isn't the absence of struggle, but the presence of control. Because when you build inner stability, you stop relying on external validation. You stop needing approval to feel whole. You stop waiting for perfect conditions to act. You become untouchable, not because you refuse to feel, but because you've mastered your response to everything. And that's the kind of power that changes lives. So ask yourself this, do you want to keep reacting, or do you want to lead your own life with purpose and control? Because the choice is yours. And once you commit to building that unshakable foundation within yourself, nothing will ever hold you back again. You now understand that true strength isn't about being cold or detached. It's about being deeply human while still standing firm. You've seen how emotional armor only isolates you, how fear tricks you into shutting down, and how inner stability is the key to real untouchability. But knowing these truths isn't enough, because knowledge without action is just theory. And if you want to live a life where you're unshakable, yet warm, powerful, yet connected, you need more than understanding. You need resilience, real, tested, unbreakable resilience. So let's talk about how you build it. Not the kind of resilience that sounds good in quotes or motivational posts, but the kind that shows up when everything else falls apart. The kind that gets you back on your feet after failure, that keeps you calm under pressure, that lets you walk away from toxicity without looking back. This isn't something you're born with. It's something you earn through discipline, mindset, and self-awareness. And once you have it, nothing can take it from you. Start with self-awareness. That's the foundation. If you don't know what triggers you, you'll keep reacting instead of responding. If you don't understand why certain situations throw you off balance, you'll keep losing control. So ask yourself, what pushes your buttons? Is it criticism, rejection, failure? Or maybe it's not even external. It could be your own thoughts that bring you down. That voice inside your head that tells you you're not good enough, that tells you things won't work out, that tells you to give up before you even try. That voice is not you. That voice is fear. And the first step to mastering it is recognizing it for what it is. Once you do that, you start taking back control. You stop letting those thoughts run your life. You stop letting emotions dictate your actions. You begin to lead your mind instead of letting it lead you. And that's where real power begins. Next comes mindset, because resilience isn't built by avoiding pain. It's built by changing how you see pain. Most people treat setbacks as proof that they aren't good enough. They see rejection as a personal attack, failure as a final verdict. But resilient people, they see them differently. They see setbacks as signals. They see failure as feedback. They treat pain not as an enemy, but as a teacher. And that shift alone changes everything. Because when you believe that every challenge is shaping you rather than breaking you, you stop fearing it. When you understand that discomfort is part of growth, you start leaning into it. When you realize that struggle isn't weakness, but transformation, you welcome it. That's the mindset that separates the truly strong from everyone else. Not because they never feel pain, but because they use it to fuel their evolution. And finally, there's daily discipline. Because no matter how aware you are or how strong your mindset is, resilience doesn't last without consistency. It's not something you build once and forget. It's strengthened every single day. Every time you choose peace over panic. Every time you breathe through frustration instead of exploding. Every time you show up even when you don't feel like it. These small moments add up. They create the muscle memory of strength. They shape who you become. So what does this look like in practice? It starts with routines that ground you. A morning ritual that sets the tone for your day. A few minutes of reflection before reacting. A pause before speaking when emotions run high. Writing down your thoughts instead of bottling them up. Facing your fears instead of avoiding them. Doing the hard thing even when you don't feel ready. These aren't grand gestures, they're quiet acts of courage, and over time, they build the kind of person who cannot be shaken. Because here's the truth, resilience isn't about being perfect, it's about being persistent. It's about getting back up one more time than you fall. It's about learning from every mistake, growing from every wound, and refusing to let anything define you except your own determination. And once you commit to building that kind of strength, you'll never feel powerless again. So ask yourself this: do you want to keep struggling against life, or do you want to master it? Do you want to keep waiting for perfect conditions to feel strong, or do you want to build strength regardless of the conditions? Because the moment you decide to take responsibility for your own resilience, you take your power back. And from that point forward, nothing, not rejection, not criticism, not even failure, can ever truly break you. Because now you know how to build unshakable strength. Now you know how to feel deeply and still stand tall. And now you're ready to take the next step, because resilience isn't just about enduring. It's about evolving. You now know that resilience isn't something you're born with. It's something you build. You've learned that emotional armor only isolates you, that fear wants you to shut down, and that inner stability is the foundation of true strength. You've seen how self-awareness, mindset, and daily discipline shape a person who doesn't break under pressure, but grows because of it. And yet, there's still one question lingering in your mind: can I really feel everything and still stay strong? Can I cry and still stand tall? Can I love deeply and still walk away when it's not right? Can I be completely human and completely untouchable at the same time? Yes. Because the strongest people in the world aren't those who feel nothing. They're those who feel everything and still choose their direction. They understand that emotions are not weaknesses. They are signals. They are fuel. They are part of what makes life meaningful. And if you want to be unshakable without becoming cold, you have to stop seeing your emotions as obstacles and start seeing them as allies. Think about the last time you felt overwhelmed. Or maybe it was heartbreak. Maybe it was failure. Maybe it was just too much. Too many responsibilities, too much pressure, too much pain. And in that moment, did you wish you could just shut it all off? Did you wish you could stop feeling so deeply? Because that's what most people do. That's how they try to survive. But surviving isn't thriving. And if you want real power, you have to do more than survive. You have to learn how to use your emotions instead of letting them use you. That starts by understanding this truth: emotion is energy. It moves through you. It rises, peaks, and passes if you let it. But when you suppress it, deny it, or fight it, it gets trapped. It builds up inside you until it explodes, or worse, until it numbs you completely. That's why so many people end up emotionally exhausted. Not because they feel too much, but because they don't process what they feel. So what's the alternative? What if instead of resisting your emotions, you learned how to move through them? What if instead of fearing pain, you gave yourself permission to feel it fully and then release it? What if instead of being controlled by your feelings, you became their master? Because that's the art of feeling without breaking. It's not about ignoring your pain. It's about not letting it define you. It's not about pretending you're fine when you're not. It's about knowing that even when you're hurting, you still have control over your next step. Your emotions don't have to stop you. They can guide you. They can warn you. They can inspire you if you learn how to listen. And here's the key: strength isn't the absence of emotion. It's the presence of choice. You can feel fear and still take action. You can feel sadness and still show up for the people who matter. You can feel rejection and still believe in your worth. That's the kind of strength that changes lives. That's the kind of strength that lets you be deeply human and completely unshaken at the same time. Because when you master your emotions instead of suppressing them, something shifts. You no longer live in reaction. You no longer wait for perfect conditions to feel strong. You become someone who feels everything, yet never loses control. Someone who experiences pain, but refuses to be broken by it. Someone who knows that warmth and strength are not opposites, but two sides of the same power. And that's where true freedom begins. The freedom to love without fear, to lead without needing approval, to stand firm without shutting people out, to be deeply connected to yourself, to others, to life itself, while still remaining untouchable in the way that matters most. So ask yourself this: do you want to keep fighting your emotions, or do you want to learn how to use them? Do you want to keep trying to numb the pain, or do you want to transform it into strength? Because once you make that shift, once you embrace your emotions as part of your power instead of a weakness, everything changes. Because now you know how to feel deeply and still stand tall. Now you know how to be warm, open, connected, and still completely unshakable. And now you're ready for the final step. The step that turns all of this into action, into identity, into unstoppable momentum. You now understand that strength and sensitivity are not opposites. That being deeply human doesn't weaken you, it empowers you. You've seen how emotional armor only isolates, how fear wants to shut you down, and how true untouchability comes from inner stability, not detachment. You've learned how to build resilience, how to master your emotions instead of suppressing them, and how to feel everything, yet still stand tall. And now, it's time to take all of that and turn it into who you are. Because this isn't just about learning new habits. It's about becoming a different version of yourself. One who no longer reacts to pain, but responds with purpose. One who doesn't need approval to feel whole. One who walks into any room, any challenge, any storm, and remains unshaken because they know who they are. This is the moment where knowledge becomes identity, where understanding turns into action, where all the pieces come together and you finally see yourself clearly, not as someone who needs protection, but as someone who already carries power within. So imagine this. You wake up and you don't need to brace yourself for the day. You don't start by worrying about what could go wrong or who might hurt you. You simply rise, knowing that whatever comes your way, you can handle it. You walk through life with calm confidence, not because nothing ever bothers you, but because nothing controls you either. You're not avoiding pain. You're not hiding from emotion. You're not pretending to be perfect. You're just fully present, fully aware, fully in control of your response. That's the kind of person you're becoming. Someone who doesn't flinch at criticism because they don't define themselves by other people's opinions. Someone who loves deeply yet walks away without breaking when something no longer serves their truth. Someone who experiences failure, disappointment, even heartbreak, and still keeps moving forward because they know those moments don't define them. Because here's the secret. You don't become untouchable by pushing people away. You become untouchable by building such a strong sense of self that nothing outside of you can shake your foundation. Your worth isn't tied to success or failure. Your peace isn't dependent on others' approval. Your strength doesn't come from being cold, but from being completely centered in who you are. And that changes everything. It changes how you show up in relationships. You're no longer desperate for validation, no longer afraid of rejection. You give love freely because you don't need it to survive. You set boundaries without guilt because you know that protecting your energy isn't selfish. It's necessary. It changes how you lead. You stop chasing power and start embodying it. You speak with conviction, not because you want attention, but because you know your voice matters. You make decisions from clarity, not fear. You inspire not by force, but by example. It changes how you live. You stop waiting for perfect conditions to feel strong. You stop looking outside yourself for permission to be whole. You stop letting past wounds dictate your future. Because you've built something inside that no one can touch. Something unshakable, something real. And this isn't about becoming someone new. It's about uncovering who you were always meant to be. The version of you that doesn't need armor. That doesn't hide behind walls. That doesn't numb pain or suppress emotion. The version of you that feels everything and still chooses strength. That experiences life fully and still stands firm. Because that's the ultimate form of power. Not the kind that silences, not the kind that isolates, but the kind that radiates, the kind that inspires, the kind that proves that you don't have to lose your warmth to gain your strength. So ask yourself this, who do you want to be? Do you want to keep surviving, or do you want to start thriving? Do you want to keep protecting yourself, or do you want to finally live? Because the path is clear, the tools are in your hands, and the only thing left to do is step into who you're becoming. Now go forward, not cold, not broken, not afraid. Go forward unshakable. Go forward untouchable. Go forward as the strongest version of yourself. You are no longer the same person who first asked the question, how do I become untouchable without becoming cold? You've walked through fear, seen the trap of emotional armor, built inner stability, developed resilience, mastered your emotions, and redefined what it means to be strong. And now you stand at the final threshold, not just knowing what to do, but embodying who you must become. Because this journey was never about tactics. It was never about tricks or techniques to appear unshaken. This was about transformation, about rewriting the way you see yourself, the world, and your place in it. Because real untouchability doesn't come from strategy, it comes from purpose, from clarity, from a life lived with intention, not reaction. And that's where most people stop short. They learn the tools, but never live by them. They understand the mindset, but never commit to it. They see the path, but never take full ownership of their direction. But you're different. Because if you've made it this far, you're not just looking for motivation, you're ready to change your life. So let's talk about what that looks like. What does it mean to truly live with purpose? To walk forward not just as someone who is emotionally strong, but as someone who is fully aligned with who they are. It means waking up each day with a clear sense of why you're here. Not for validation, not for approval, not to prove anything to anyone, but because you know your value. You know your mission. You know the kind of impact you want to make, not because someone told you to matter, but because you've decided to. Purpose doesn't come from searching endlessly. It comes from choosing to stand for something bigger than your fears, choosing to lead your life instead of letting life lead you, choosing to build, to grow, to give, to rise, regardless of how you feel in the moment. Because here's the truth. Purpose is not found. It is declared. And when you declare yours, everything changes. Your setbacks don't define you. They refine you. Your pain doesn't break you. It fuels you. Your past doesn't trap you. It teaches you, because you no longer live for comfort. You live for meaning. You live for growth. You live for the highest version of yourself. That's the difference between surviving and thriving. Survivors wait for things to get better. Thrivers create better things. Survivors react to life. Thrivers design it. And that's exactly what you're being called to do. Because living with purpose doesn't mean everything goes perfectly. It means nothing can shake your foundation. It means rejection doesn't scare you. Failure doesn't stop you. Criticism doesn't control you. Because your worth isn't tied to outcomes. It's rooted in who you are and who you choose to become every single day. This is the final piece of the puzzle. The one that turns all the lessons into action, all the strength into direction, all the awareness into impact. So ask yourself, what legacy do you want to leave? Not just in the eyes of others, but in your own heart. What kind of mark do you want to make on this world? How do you want to show up, not only when things go well, but especially when they don't? Because purpose gives you more than motivation. It gives you endurance. It gives you clarity when you're lost. It gives you courage when you're afraid. It gives you peace when everything else is chaos. And once you find it, once you claim it, you will never again have to wonder if you're strong enough. Because strength won't be something you chase. It will be something you radiate. So now you have a choice. You can go back to the way things were, to waiting for the right time, to protecting yourself from pain, to holding back until you feel ready. Or you can step forward right now as the person you are becoming, as someone who has learned how to be untouchable without becoming cold, or someone who feels deeply yet remains unshaken, someone who walks through fire and still shines. Because you don't need permission. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need guarantees. All you need is the decision. And if you make it today, if you commit to living not out of fear, but out of purpose, then nothing will ever hold you back again. So go forward, not cold, not broken, not afraid. Go forward, untouchable.